Welcome to another series with the Elm Church. Today we're going to talk about the ripple effects of sharing our faith, mainly with evangelism. And I have here David Lee, Sandy Uy. I have David Chang and myself. We're just going to be just kind of like dissecting this apart on what this means to us as a church. Even, just understanding how that word evangelism has kind of changed. So I guess my first question to all of you would be, what would evangelism mean to you?
I think for me, it's simply just about sharing our faith. And that could look in many different ways, but I think the base of it is just being able to display and share the gospel and what Christ has done for us in our lives, and to be able to portray that and share that. But that could be in whatever form. It could be through word, it could be through action. And I think all that is encompassing evangelism. So for me, I think that's how I look at it, simply put.
Yeah, I mean, I would shadow that, just add, there's a component of you share your faith by sharing your story, and then you're hoping to encourage them in their story. So encouraging their faith to grow, even like one little bit. And so evangelism doesn't stop when someone comes to faith. It continues to happen as they wrestle with doubts and go through the highs and lows of life, and you're just constantly helping each other look to Jesus and see what that means for them.
Same thing for me, sharing faith, but I think the two main components that are attached to it is time spent together and sharing stories. And I think we'll talk more about that later on, but it's just so important to me that when we're sharing faith, these are the two things that need to happen with a genuine heart in place, without any true agenda, no agenda such as like it ending if they decide to believe or not believe. So I feel like the outcome should not matter when you're evangelizing. It's not about the result. It's just about doing it, and doing it out of love, out of an authentic place.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Because when you make it a performance and you have to like check that off, like I did that for God, then you make that person into a project and you get impatient with them if they're not responding a certain way. But it isn't that. It's just love, and you meet with them, you eat with them. There's a lot of listening involved. Probably more listening than speaking with evangelism. I feel like at least that's true. And when I think of evangelism, it's more listening than speaking. You're really trying to draw out that person and hear them where they're coming from.
That's good.
Yeah, I feel like we're almost like touching upon like what the negative feelings of evangelism sounds like to us. And I'm just curious, like, I almost want to just name it and just like, what is it about evangelism that doesn't work here? Or what we've seen that kind of like made us feel like projects, or made us feel so turned off by that word. What would that look like for you guys? Just like, I would love to just name it so that this way there's a differentiation of why we do things differently.
The very first thing that comes to mind for me is not throwing the name of Jesus all over the place with an intention to throw it in people's faces. I feel like Jesus' name is so holy and it's so full of love and grace, but when you're using it for a point that is self-serving, it's just very distasteful for me. Like when I was serving in Indonesia, like a lot of people know the name of Jesus, but they don't see that God, see that man the way I see him. And so when you're just throwing the name at them just for the sake of evangelizing or sharing your faith, it can be very distasteful and it can come off the wrong way, even if you meant it in a good way, but then just throwing it everywhere without care. Very distasteful.
Yeah, so I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and for me, like I watched a lot of like street evangelists, right? But they are very good with their points, like their arguments, like defending like the faith and like proving why Christianity it is the way it is and the truth of it, right? But then when you look at the videos and you see the street evangelists and the audience interacting, it never leads to like a wholesome conversation. There's always like an argumentative kind of, environment. And then the street evangelist goes, "Oh, I'm saying this out of love, right? I'm saying this out of love. I love you. but you know,
It's always a but.
I was like, you know, but then it's like he or she is saying all the right things, you know, defending the faith amazingly, right? Have all the theology, the literature background, and the historic evidence, right? But then like, it doesn't lead to the other individual to receive that well. It leads to just an argument, and it leaves a distasteful taste, distastefulness of the gospel more, instead of the loving message and the tasteful message.
Yeah.
Right? That
Should be tasty. What a tasty message.
Yeah.
What
So it's
are
like,
you
for
eating
me,
later?
it's like, you know, that definitely would not work here. You know, if we're talking about in the context of Elmhurst, right? Because people are already guarded. So if you come off that way already, then it's already like even a thicker wall that you're building between you and the individual, right? So I think it doesn't work. It doesn't seem like, for me personally, that kind of energy or that kind of like method I feel like it doesn't work anywhere, but I think especially here, you know. So yes.
I do feel like in Queens, and especially in Elmhurst where we are, that everyone has a religion, you know, and that's on like you said Sunny earlier, you know, like who is, yeah, we know this name, but why would you push that upon me when I already have such a close relationship with my own religion? Or even just like shouting on the streets like that, like that's, yeah, it is distasteful. And it's also, I feel, almost not loving, because like you're supposed to be like chill with your neighbors, something like, you know, I don't want to be a church that just like comes off and like, let me just yell at you. I mean, we'll do that later, right? No, but like, sometimes I'm like, why would you do that? It's terrible. Just like yelling at people like that. They already have their own beliefs. Like, who knows what they're going through? You don't know what kind of, you know, like trauma they have or issues that their family's going, but yet you're yelling at them and just kind of like throwing this down there in their face. And it's not loving. You know?
And especially when you're on the street, nobody knows each other. We're strangers. So how would the person listening to you know where you're coming from? How would they know if it's coming from a loving place or you're coming from a place where you just want to teach them what you know because you believe it's right? If I was just another person on the street and not a believer, and people were just telling me to believe all these stories with these booklets, I mean, I feel like God can use anything. But at the same time, if I'm just another stranger, why would I listen to you? I don't know who you are, where you're from. I don't know what kind of background do you have? What kind of family did you grow up in? And do we have any common ground? Like, that's why I was saying earlier that it needs to start with time spent together where I can understand where you're coming from. Like, if I knew you were coming from a loving place, there's a much higher possibility, a much higher chance that I would listen to you and listen to the stories you want to tell. At least I'll think, this is what David really believes. I might not believe it, but I see why it's so important to him. And to me, that's already so much. It's a great first step, you know, like having that understanding, having that trust in the relationship, just enough so that they would entrust me with some stories of their own, and for us to exchange these stories.
And I love what you just touched on there too, in that like there's a sense of like we're always gauging first, at least in Elmhurst we're gauging first how safe we feel with someone that we're talking to before we disclose a lot or let them into our lives. I mean, as a church, we've had so many counseling workshops on entry gate questions, and the whole point of that is, you know, no one shows you their whole house from the start. They let you in the front door, and if you start acting unsafe, that's where you're gonna stop. You know, and then we're gonna ask you to leave. And so when evangelism is this kind of like, I'm gonna make my way into your house and tell you what to do and how to order your life, we're just like, whoa, stop. Like, this is a mistake. We're not gonna let them in. And ultimately for me, what that means is you're not gonna get 5-6 conversations in to get to know that person because they're already thinking, how do I end this? How do I shut this down? And so it's so important for us to build a relationship of love first, where we really genuinely want to love our neighbor and build a friendship with them, hear where they're coming from, where they've been, what kind of questions they have. It starts with all of that listening, you know, before we even have a chance to start sharing, you know, what it is that we believe. And hopefully we're living in a way where they want to know, okay, so why do you choose to connect with your neighbors in that way? I think those questions naturally come.
that whole house analogy is great because I think people need to understand that in Queens and even in a very immigrant saturated neighborhood, our homes most likely is unsafe already. So when you come with that unsafe attitude, it is already like an alarm. Right. So it's not like not all of us have great upbringings. I'm generalizing, right? But it's already an unsafe place. So when you don't consider that and you don't get to know us and you bring that energy, it's a threat. And then now I associate that threat with your religion.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
That's
So I would actually I love you guys too, but I would love to ask you guys. If you were to summarize what you feel evangelism is to you in one word, what would that word be?
One word: authenticity. It must be authentic.
I would say vulnerability.
I would say I don't know. One word. That's so hard.
One word. It's very hard. Oh, but that's really good though, because I feel like we're going in a really good direction. That this
authenticity,
is, yeah.
vulnerability. If I could add to that, loving. I don't know. Yeah, just loving.
Yeah.
You're being genuine with them. Right?
Yeah.
Loving.
I think even when I'm hearing you guys speak, for me, it's like relational. Because it's. I think people don't come vulnerable or, loving, or even. What did you say, Sandy? It was
Authentic.
Authenticity. They come as if like I'm here to change you. Really appreciate this and just your thoughts on this. I know that this is something I think some churches don't talk about, but we have to do it here, right? Because Elmhurst and Queens in general is so diverse that it means something different here. So really appreciate that y'all are joining in and listening to our conversation and just our thoughts, our raw thoughts on what evangelism means here. So thank you. We will have other episodes, so tune in. Thank you.